Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the DuQuette House. And welcome to the Fraternal Order of Sequestered Mystics. I forget what day it is, but it's close to 19. Anyway, uh, it is off and on rainy and a little chilly in Costa Mesa. I hope things are nice and cozy where you are sequestered. We're on number 19 here. I didn't mean to abuse this talisman, but this is my Aleph talisman there. So we are on. Officially, it's chapter 19, but it's actually a postscript chapter to the exorcism chapter that we just read, Exorcism of Garkon. And if we recall from yesterday, I had called Regarde and told him, gave him a report of the adventure of the exorcism. And he told me as just before we hung up, he said the law of conservation of energy applies to magic as well as physics. Our friend, meaning the demon, may not have been destroyed. He may have just moved along to the nearest center of least resistance. And this was the last time Regarde and I spoke. 2 years later, I would receive another call from Dr. Kaufman and a new lesson in the conservation of energy. I would like to, my Life with the Spirit is pretty PG rated, but it does get a little adult in spots, and this is going to be one of those spots. So if you've got little kids that are enjoying listening to this, you may want to skip this morning's brief little thing because it gets a little explicit. Chapter 19, The Exorcism of Garkon, a postscript. Two years to the month after Sharon's exorcism, Dr. Kaufman called me again to see if Nathan and I would be willing to help Sharon. Not Garkon again, I groaned. No, she laughed. Actually, Garkon has been gone since the exorcism. Sharon finished her master's degree and is now a PhD candidate at UCLA. No, Sharon's doing great. There's been a family tragedy, though. Her son Robert committed suicide day before yesterday, and the two girls are taking it pretty hard. This didn't sound like anything that I should involve the esoteric theatrics of Bishop DuQuette's traveling demon show. I voiced my sadness and asked Dr. Kaufman to relay my sympathies. I knew etiquette now demanded that I say something like, "Is there anything I can do to help?" But I resisted the temptation to be a gentleman. I could feel Dr. Kaufman waiting for me to say it. And for several uncomfortable moments, we remained locked in a showdown of silence. Lon, maybe you can give me some advice. Oh, God. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew I wasn't going to like it. Alex, Sharon's oldest girl, believes that her brother's ghost is having sex with her. Why did I answer the phone? I sat down and pushed off my shoes. Go on. The story she related was every bit as bizarre and gruesome as Sharon's possession. In fact, as Dr. Kaufman unfolded the details, I couldn't help but view the scenario from a magical perspective, and the conclusions I drew made me sick at heart. For nearly their entire lives, Sharon's 3 children were forced to grow up with a suicidal father and a mother who was perpetually on the brink of madness. In this unwholesome environment, they had only themselves to turn to for emotional support. As bright kids, they soon discovered what keys to turn and what buttons to push to exploit their dysfunctional parents. In a nutshell, as long as mom and dad were crazy, the kids got anything they wanted out of them. Their father's suicide and their mother's liberation from Garkon changed all of that almost overnight. Sharon now had her life back and was not about to return to the old insane patterns, including allowing herself to be manipulated by 3 disturbed and very spoiled children. The 2 oldest, Robert, now 18, and his sister Alex, now 16, acted out their frustration in grand style by publicly flaunting their heretofore secret incestuous relationship. Their reputations ruined at school, Robert enlisted in the Air Force, and Alex plunged headlong into nymphomaniacal promiscuity. After less than a month of basic training, Robert went AWOL and came home. In one last attempt to bring Sharon back to line, he accidentally hanged himself in the garage in what the coroner described as a, quote, failed mock suicide attempt. For 2 days and nights since her brother's death, Alex had been violently masturbating in her room, smothered as she moaned in Robert's embraces. I really didn't want to get involved in this one, but really had very little choice in the matter. I called Nathan, who reluctantly agreed we should go and at least banish the house. I also invited Deborah Wiener, a mutual friend and a gifted clairvoyant. At Sharon's home, we asked first to see the garage where Robert died. To our shock and utter disgust, the area had not been touched since the body had been removed. The remains of a severed rope still draped from a ceiling beam, and the floor was still covered with the foul contents of the poor boy's bowels. We then toured the rest of the house, including Robert's bedroom. His bed was still unmade, and his unwashed laundry strewn all over the floor. The 3 of us huddled for a few minutes and decided the first thing that needed to be done was to rid the house of everything to which the shell of a confused and recently disembodied person might be attracted. The first things to go would be the filthy, sweat-soaked clothes to which the throbbing residue of his vital essence still clung like Spanish moss. Barbara said there was enough astral chum in the air to build the bodies of 50 ghosts. We cleared out his room completely and piled all his dirty clothes, his bathroom towels, and his sandy wetsuit on the floor of the garage. We then proceeded to ceremonially banish and cleanse every room in the house except the garage. Our plan was to lure Robert out of the house and concentrate him in the garage. Before we dealt with Robert in the garage, however, we needed to talk to Alex. Alex behaved as if she didn't want to be banished or exorcised or bothered, and we respected her wishes. she did allow us to banish and cleanse her room. And before we left, she cooperated in a little ceremony that Nathan had devised. He tied one end of a length of string around a portrait of Robert and the other around Alex's waist. He then gave her a pair of scissors and asked if she could cut the string. She said she could and proceeded to do so. Our last duty was in the garage and included, along with a lot of bell ringing, the supreme banishing rituals of the pentagram and the hexagram, and the whole spectrum of Golden Dawn purification and consecration ceremonies. Sharon thanked us and vowed that she would get rid of everything in the garage the next day. As we shook hands, I realized that Regardi was right. Garcon had just moved along to the nearest center of least resistance. I didn't want to know where the law of conservation of energy would send him from there. And that's the end of chapter 19. Starting tomorrow, we're going to move into the Enochian magic chapters and sections, and I hope you'll be here with us for that. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Happy feast day of the first day of the writing of the book of the law. This is April 8th. We'll see you tomorrow, I hope.